By the 9 and 4, welcome back to the library. For our first entry of the third series of Intro to the Realms, we will be going over in brief the various planes and extra-dimensional spaces that exist within the realms. As my perceptive patrons and regular visitors know all too well at this point. But for those who are just beginning their examinations of the realms, I am the recorder, and this entry is but an overview of the subject at hand, with further exploration to come as interests dictate. Beginning with what most understand as the normal, or material plane. This is where the overwhelming majority of living, mortal life resides. The laws of magic and physics are well known and understood, and can in many cases be intuitively grasped, as there is a logic and a reason for things. However, there are many other planes of many other shapes, sizes, environments, and variations on each. The classification of these planes are as follows. Planes of reflection. These planes are directly tied to the material plane, and while normally out of phase with it, can interact with it in the proper circumstances. Of course, these circumstances will vary based on the plane in question. However, they only have connections to the material plane in most cases, and on occasion the infinite space of the interplanar expanse. More on that later. The three best known, and thus most utilized of these planes are, from least to greatest, the plane of shadow, which potentially can link with any shadow for both transit and observation. Next, the plane of dreams, where many seek out knowledge, fancy, and escapes from the labors and trials of their days. However, the most well-known and most interacted with of the planes of reflection is that of the plane of spirit, or etheric plane, where the souls of the recently departed first slide into after their deaths, as well as the place of residence for ghosts, banshees, and many other non-corporeal undead. This is the only major plane of reflection to have a connection to the expanse. Beyond the material plane and its reflection planes lies the interplanar expanse, also known as the astral sea or astral plane, among many of its other titles. It is a place of energy, thought, and emotion. Many of the laws of physics are ignored here, while magic is relatively unaffected. The expanse serves as the connective tissue for nearly every other plane, with the exceptions of the plane of reflections. Even then, a few, such as the spirit plane, indeed do connect to the expanse. Large conglomerates of matter, most being naturally drawn in through the various portals to and from the material plane, where other conglomerates of matter are actually constructed using found matter on the plane or matter brought with its builders. This, and everything in between, can be found within its infinite folds of esoteric and often logic-defying space. It should be noted that the energies for many magics and other metaphysical effects are sourced from the expanse and its infinite reserves of various forms of power. Likewise, excess and unfocused magical or metaphysical energies tend to dissipate into the expanse when not confined from doing so, often with a visual effect. Hence, the glow that many casters will emit when they are preparing to cast their spells, or others using their magical or semi-magical powers. There are many that reside and thrive within the expanse, as it can, as will be explained later, serve as an alternative for long-range interplanetary travel. Others are the descendants of those who chose to live in the expanse for various reasons, with many species and life forms having done so over the ages. However, the chances of encountering any who wish not to be found are nigh impossible to accurately describe. Imagine trying to find a grain of sand in a desert that is roiling and moving like a sea in a giant storm, and you begin to see the difficulty. However, it is within the expanse that the shadow mirror war rages on, further exemplifying the vastness of the expanse, as very few who travel or even reside within the expanse beyond the principal combatants are even aware that this conflict has been raging for thousands of years. Beyond the expanse is known as the far plains, and these are near endless in number and form. From self-made mini-planes of archmages and wizards, to the elemental planes and their subplanes, to the homes of the divine themselves. The largest group of these planes tend to be labeled as the planes of concept, each a collection or distillation of a concept or idea, possibly a philosophy, made manifest, often in its full spectrum of application. Ideas such as laws, chaos, life, good, death, evil, greed, and so on. It is from these places that the great beings associated with these concepts are born, live, and return when they die. Angels and demons are the easiest and perhaps best known examples of these creatures, but each of the planes has its own grouping of beings that are tied to it and serve it, or the master of the plane, to varying degrees depending on the plane in question. Demons and devils are notoriously insubordinate. Also included among the plane of concepts are the elemental planes, although they do deserve a special mention, as they are also among the only planes of concept that have direct links to the material plane, and each other, as a matter of their nature, as opposed to a link forged and created as part or as a device within the plane. Fire, earth, water, and air are the four largest and most powerful of these planes, with their intersecting or overlapping areas acting as subplanes in between them. This makes the elemental planes both a single traversable place, while at the same time being in actuality more than half a dozen different planes in theory. This also ensures the flow of power and force can conduct itself as needed to keep the great balance between these fundamental elemental energies. The last, but by no means least, group of planes that are counted amongst the far planes is that of the divine planes. As no doubt can be discerned from the title, this is where the gods can be found. With the exception of the V's, each divine will craft a plane for themselves and the souls of their followers. All within this plane is at the command of their god, as their hold on reality within it is near absolute, within their nature and power as a divine being. The V's, however, share a singular plane of reality for the totality of their members and the many billions of souls that follow them. The Hall of the V's, as this plane is known, is massive beyond compare, and will be a subject of a future entry. But for our purposes, it serves as the model for what a divine place is meant to be. A haven for the faithful and a place of rest and preparation for miracles and interventions to come. With that basic framework in mind, we quickly move on to the fact that this framework, as described, applies to nearly each and every planet or system. unless that planet or system and its people have been united by means that are not fully understood but assumed to be culturally based. Interactions on the non-material planes just will not happen. This has proven to be the largest hurdle in using planar transit as an alternative to other means for interstellar travel. Cog space is more reliable, and other options far safer. However, it appears that each grand culture shares a planar sea. Its members able to travel as one would typically expect as described above between the various planes. But each culture is kept from crossing into another culture's sea, even though both seas will have a plane of fire and a plane of air, a plane of law, and a plane of death. And even though those are technically the same plane, they never cross. It should be stressed that by culture, in this context, I mean as a larger global or interstellar body of culture. For example, the realms are a sea, as is the ancient empire its own sea. In fact, it is believed that the ancient empire's strict rules of autonomy and policies of isolation have served to ensure that this divide remains, apart from any other intents that it might have. Beyond the rarity that the ancient empire represents, most worlds will see their extraplanar geography shift to be incorporated and harmonized with that of the larger sea of the culture that is contacting them, while the unique variations of and wholly individual planes of that sea will be preserved. This process is normally so subtle as to not really be noticing happening, and can take many years to fully complete, with the changes eventually appearing as just natural part of the planar environment and appearing without fanfare or disruption, generally when no one is looking. This fractured state of planar cosmology is assumed to be a result of the cultural drift in the unknown ages from the first travels of the Expedition fleet. These were further compounded and set into metaphorical stone with the summoning of Vanson and the separation of Jam'mar from the rest of the material plane. It is clear from the information available that after summoning of the daemon and the loss of the homerealm, those left behind found many of the systems and devices that were critical to their interstellar communication, starships, and the connected civilizations no longer functioned correctly, if at all. It is because the links and connections that those devices had used had utterly been disrupted by the vast degree of change that the separation of the home realm from the greater cosmology had entailed. It would be as if north became west and south became north, with the sun sinking in the north at night while rising in the east at noon. Or at least the devices trying to interface and work with the now changed and altered planar cosmology. This was the situation. However, this also explains why, once reunited as a single culture, the cosmologies involved shift and integrate without any great degree of issue, because they're merely returning things to how they're supposed to be, becoming that much closer to the proper whole. It is unclear if these effects of damage extended beyond the veil that surrounds the Credelis cluster, as there is little known about the greater galaxy beyond the veil that hides the cluster from that greater galaxy. With that final footnote made, I feel this is a good place for us to bring this entry to a close. I hope you now have a better understanding of the cosmology of the realms than you did before this entry. As always, my regular viewers, new guests, and perceptive patrons, I am the recorder, and I thank you for your time, your interest, and your patience. It means the realms to me, and I look forward to continuing to explore the realms with you as we continue through Series 3 of Intro to the Realms. Until you next make your way back to the library for your next entry, by the 9 and 4, be well, take care of yourselves and each other. If you'd like to contribute to the further exploration and explanation of the realms, please consider leaving a comment, a like, and sharing the video around. I read all the comments and make efforts to reply to each. Thank you for helping to grow the channel, and know I look forward to each and every one of your comments. Other methods of support can be found in the channel's description. Thank you for watching.